Hello, welcome at G Smart TV. What if I tell you say two of Nollywood's most admired stars once shared a moment so intense, so unexpected, that even the people closest to them didn't see it coming? A story of ambition, silent loyalty, mixed signals, and one decision that changed everything. Sit tight, because this gist no be the one you go here finish and forget. This one, it get layers. Two well-known figures became the center of attention not because of public declarations, but because of a connection that seemed to exist quietly beneath the surface. What made it compelling was the absence of confirmation. There were no interviews, no photos, no bold statements, just a feeling fans couldn't shake. In an industry where everything is usually loud, this silence felt intentional, almost sacred. People began reading between the lines, shared screen moments, subtle energy shifts, and a calm familiarity that felt deeper than routine professionalism. The mystery pulled viewers in because it felt human. Everyone has experienced a connection they couldn't explain or define. That unspoken bond became relatable, and relatability is powerful. The more nothing was said, the more people paid attention. This kind of quiet intrigue doesn't burn fast, it simmers. It invites imagination, conversation, and endless theories. It also reflects how some of the strongest emotions don't need validation to exist. They simply are. And once an audience senses that kind of emotional undercurrent, it becomes impossible to look away, because silence sometimes speaks louder than any confession ever could. The contrast in personalities added another layer of fascination. One energy leaned toward structure, control, and restraint, while the other leaned toward openness, expression, and emotional intensity. When two people like that cross paths, sparks are almost inevitable, not the loud, chaotic kind, but the slow-burning type that builds tension over time. These differences didn't clash immediately, instead, they complemented each other. One grounded the moment, the other gave it color. Viewers sensed balance, like two missing puzzle pieces aligning. But contrast also comes with challenges. Different emotional languages can lead to misunderstanding, even when intentions are pure. What feels like caution to one person may feel like distance to another. What feels like passion to one may feel overwhelming to the other. This dynamic made their connection feel real, because real-life relationships often struggle not from lack of feeling, but from difference in expression. That realism drew people in deeper, because it mirrored situations many have lived through but rarely see portrayed with subtlety. Everything began in a professional space, which made the development feel organic rather than forced. Shared work naturally creates trust. Long hours, emotional scenes, and mutual dependence on performance break down barriers quickly. Familiarity grows not through intention, but through repetition, seeing someone consistently show up, deliver, and stay present. Over time, that consistency builds comfort. Comfort opens doors to vulnerability. What started as simple collaboration slowly transformed into mutual awareness. Not attraction announced with words, but attraction felt in pauses, in eye contact, in timing. This progression felt believable because it followed how real connections form. There was no sudden shift, no dramatic turning point at first. Just a gradual deepening. That slow build made it compelling because it mirrored reality. Viewers weren't watching a storyline, they were sensing a journey. And journeys, especially quiet ones, keep people watching because they feel unfinished, like something important is still unfolding just out of reach. One moment stood out as a turning point, not because it was flashy, but because it carried weight. An emotionally charged scene became more than acting. It felt raw. Stripped of performance, almost too real. When moments like that happen, they tend to linger. They change how people see each other. After such moments, it's impossible to return fully to neutrality. Something shifts internally, even if nothing changes outwardly. That kind of shared vulnerability can deepen connection instantly. It creates a memory that both people carry, whether they speak about it or not. Viewers could sense that shift. The energy before and after wasn't the same. Subtle changes became noticeable, longer pauses, softer tones, increased awareness. That single moment became symbolic, representing the point where boundaries blurred. It showed how powerful shared emotion can be, and how one moment can quietly redefine everything that comes after, even when nothing is said aloud. Despite the visible chemistry, unseen struggles were shaping the direction of the connection. Internal conflict often determines outcomes more than external circumstances. One side carried the weight of responsibility, focus, and long-term vision. There was a fear of losing direction, of letting emotions interfere with carefully laid plans. The other side carried the desire for emotional honesty and reassurance, valuing presence and connection in the moment. These internal battles were never public, but they influenced every decision. When people are torn between heart and purpose, they often retreat inward. That retreat can look like distance, even when feelings remain strong. This layer added depth to the story because it showed that not all separation is born from lack of care. Sometimes it's born from care that feels too risky to explore fully. Differences in emotional priorities slowly became more pronounced. One approach leaned toward stability and predictability, while the other leaned toward emotional flow and openness. Neither approach was wrong, but alignment matters. When priorities differ, even small moments can feel heavy. A pause may feel intentional. A silence may feel loaded. Without clear communication, assumptions grow. This imbalance didn't explode into conflict. Instead, it quietly reshaped interactions. That subtle erosion made the situation more painful, because it wasn't dramatic enough to address openly, yet strong enough to feel. Viewers could sense the strain, and that tension kept attention locked. It reflected how real relationships often unravel, not with arguments, but with unanswered questions and unspoken needs. Public perception added another layer of pressure. In a space where observation is constant, every move can be misinterpreted. Privacy becomes fragile. The awareness of being watched can turn simple interactions into calculated decisions. That pressure makes vulnerability feel dangerous. When people begin to weigh how moments might be perceived rather than how they feel, connection suffers. This fear doesn't need confirmation to exist. It lingers in the background, influencing behavior quietly. Viewers understood this instinctively, because it reflects a universal truth: being seen changes how people act. That awareness heightened the emotional stakes, making every moment feel fragile and temporary. The shift from closeness to distance didn't happen suddenly. It unfolded slowly, almost imperceptibly. Conversations shortened. Moments became fewer. Energy changed. This gradual withdrawal felt more painful than an abrupt ending because it left room for hope. Distance without closure creates confusion. It makes people question what they felt and whether it was ever mutual. That uncertainty resonated deeply. Viewers stayed engaged because they were waiting for clarity that never quite arrived. The slow fade mirrored real emotional experiences, where endings aren't always announced. Sometimes they just happen, quietly, leaving behind unanswered questions. Eventually, a decision shaped everything that followed. Stepping back required restraint and maturity. It wasn't driven by anger or resentment, but by self-awareness. Recognizing misalignment takes courage. Choosing distance despite emotional attachment is never easy. Respect remained, but that didn't erase the emotional cost. This choice reframed the story from romance to growth. It showed that sometimes the healthiest decision is also the most painful. That nuance added depth, moving the narrative beyond fantasy into something reflective and grounded. Disappointment lingered quietly. Not loud enough to create conflict, but present enough to be felt. Emotional residue doesn't disappear just because understanding exists. Feelings don't follow logic. They fade in their own time. This lingering effect made the story feel unfinished, and unfinished stories stay with people longer. Viewers could sense that something meaningful had passed, leaving behind growth and reflection rather than closure. That emotional aftertaste kept interest alive, because it felt real and unresolved. What made everything unforgettable was the fact that it never fully became anything concrete. The power of almost is strong. Almost stories invite imagination. They linger longer than completed ones because they leave space for interpretation. This connection became a symbol of timing, choice, and restraint. It reminded people that not all meaningful encounters are meant to last, yet they can still shape who we become. That idea stayed with viewers because it reflected life itself, messy, incomplete, and deeply human. And now, the question remains open, not for answers, but for reflection. Do unfinished connections hurt more than broken ones? Does timing matter more than chemistry? Or do some people come into our lives simply to change us, not stay? Share your thoughts below, because every perspective adds a new layer to this story, and the conversation is far from over.